Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, sweet pleasure seekers. Oh, today is going to be a fun show / class. So this evening, when I went to go, actually it wasn't this evening, it was yesterday evening, I went to go promote an event that had been put up for the show. And I realized that time and again, that when I get off of my show, my husband will say, "How was your class tonight?" And I'm like, "Honey, it's a podcast. It's been 7 years, over 7 years, 7.5 years. It's podcast." He's like, yeah, whatever. So I thought, I'll run with this. If he sees it as a class, maybe there's something interesting and true about that, as we do a lot of learning on this show all the time. The Pleasure Zone is filled with information, filled with insights, tools, tips, all kinds of things, and it's a highly educational show. So I say that as if it's not mine, but the Pleasure Zone is co-creating with me all the time. So it's interesting to see how much of the Pleasure Zone is about education, and it is like a class. It's like a free class. So for those of you who are listening to this for the very first time, go back, listen to all the 300 or so other podcasts I've done, all which are educational, all which are like free classes. So tonight in particular is actually going to be a class that is, it was inspired by a friend of mine. Most of my friends are awesome and they are my inspirations for shows. So we will get into this topic of creating your own pleasure manual, creating the manual for you, creating it for you, having it in your life, and then what else do you do with it? So for those of you who are brand new as well, my name is Milica Jelenic, and I love working with bodies and pleasure. It's my thing. It's what I do. It's who I be. I can say that it wasn't always that way for me, but I've always had a curiosity about bodies, and I've always had a curiosity about physical pleasure, far more than I've had curiosity about, say, sports or something. For me, sports is not physical pleasure, but for other people it would be. I've had more curiosity in the areas of sexual pleasure and the areas of understanding psyche, I suppose, and like, where do we come from, and where do these thoughts that we have come from, and how do we create ourselves in our life to be who we are, and how do all of these things that we've chosen and been create who we are? So these things kind of ultra fascinate me. So this show has a psychological perspective, sociological perspective, educational perspective as well, looking at things too that are sometimes from anthropological as well. So many different facets that I look at. But today, particularly, is something that created out of inspiration, as a friend of mine was having some trouble with communicating information to her lover, husband. And she said, "I wish he would just know what I wanted." And I said, "Well, that's interesting. Like, how many people just wish that their lover knew what you wanted in bed and wish you didn't have to like tell them everything, do this, put your hand here?" And you know what? I say that with that voice because that's often how people feel when they try to give feedback or sort of instruction when it comes to sex. And also, the person receiving the information can oftentimes take it as an affront or like an insult. It can be tricky. Communication about sex can be incredibly tricky, especially with your lover, especially if it's been long term, they sometimes feel like, where's this coming from out of the blue? What, you liked this before, now you don't. Our bodies change. So number one, know that it's okay if your body changed. It's okay if your lover's interest has changed as well. So they might not, enjoy doing the things they used to do with you. So we always are in a place of evaluating, reevaluating things. It's interesting, right? We look at, in business, we have employees, or, we are employed, usually to some degree, unless you're self-employed. And then we review things. You'll have your 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, yearly reviews. You'll have all these reviews to look at, what are you creating? Are you hitting your targets? All of those things. So one of the things we're not doing is 99.9% of the people out there in relationships are not looking at targets for the relationship, and they are not looking at, have we achieved our target? Not only have we achieved our target, are we on target for like what we'd truly love to have in our lives? And sometimes we need to break down the big picture and break it down to smaller targets so that we can accomplish that big picture. Say, for example, if you would like to become like a tantric master, that target might not be 3 weeks from now. That target might be a lifelong study of Tantra. Truly, to become kind of the master of Tantra, you would need a lifelong study of that. Yeah. So then what your 3 month target might be, for example, would be to go out and seek maybe some reference materials, books, videos, classes, courses. Then maybe your 6 month target might be to put that into a daily practice. Your 9 month target might be to work that daily practice in with your partner. And then that 12 month practice might be attending something together as a couple practicing Tantra in maybe like an environment that's like a class or a course that you can learn to heighten and deepen your skills and your different methods with Tantra. So you do understand how having targets in relationships are very helpful, just like they are in business, just like they are with finances. Having targets can be super helpful in assisting you with day-to-day tasks so that you can feel like you're accomplishing something. This is also super helpful in ways that if you feel like you're not getting forward or you're not moving anywhere in your life and things seem to just keep on repeating and the pattern keeps repeating, create some targets. What would you like your relationship to be like in, say, 5 years from now? And you kind of look at that big picture and then we kind of break it down. So in 5 years, you would like it to be like this. Okay, so what are the steps to get you to that level? Like I was using Tantric Master for as an example. We break it down and we go back to those pieces that get you started. Yeah. So sometimes when we look at that big end target, it's a lot easier to break down those basic pieces. Now, if that sounds really tricky to you, by all means, connect with me. I absolutely love looking at the big target and then breaking down the pieces. I think I was about 30 something years old when somebody said to my mom, well, you read tea leaves and Milica reads tea leaves and she reads tarot and you know how to do readings of other things too. So like, what's the difference? Like if I see you and if I see her, what's the deal? And my mom said, I see the end picture and she sees the process. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never realized that that's actually one of my skills. So my mom could see that in me, that I see process and I can see the process to get to that picture. She sees the end picture and she can say, yeah, this is the energy. And she follows energy like dynamically. So she could get the energy of joy and she'll be like, I have no process on that. I'm going to choose into joy. So for me, I can break it down and I can create process for you, create target points with you so that you actually have things to hit and move forward on. Now, when I do coaching with people and they don't have targets, I'll sometimes let them sit and stew on that for a couple of months until they come back with targets. And I'll let them stew and I'll let them stew. And then when they finally have a target, I'll like, cool, you have a target. Now let's work on that. Like, how do we achieve your target? And sometimes I'll ask people to have more than one target because their targets are something that they don't even, it's not congruent with their energy. So then I'll usually ask them to have more than one in case they're not congruent with who they are. Say if my target right now is to become an astronaut, it's not congruent with my energy and my lifestyle right now, even though it's a cool target. I would need to look at some other things that might be other things that might give me that same feeling. Like, then I would go, okay, so what is it about being an astronaut that you would like to have or be? And then the person might be like, well, I want that freedom of exploration. Or I might be like, what it really is a freedom of exploration. It's not really about being an astronaut. It's about having freedom of exploration. Oh, cool. So now we break it down. So that's why sometimes I'll get you to get one target. And even if it seems ridiculous, we look at a secondary target that's actually the energy of what you're asking for, even though sometimes the specifics show up as I would like to be an astronaut. All right. So when we know that we have targets, we need to also know how to create them and how to follow through on them. And what are they? And all of these other things. And all of these are part of creating your own pleasure manual for you, for your lover, for your future, for your own knowing. So why do we do that? Why on earth would you spend time sitting around wondering about your pleasure when you're like, well, I know that I like my clit stroke this way, and I know that I like my dick sucked this way. I know these things. I don't need to write it in a manual. Well, the thing is, when you start writing these things and you start connecting it outside of your brain, and you can look at it and go, yeah, I really like my clit stroked. And you're like, well, actually, there's a really specific way that I like my clit stroked. Oh, okay. So as much as I like am saying to my lover, stroke my clit, they don't know what you're saying because you didn't give them the instruction manual, your pleasure manual. So many other things come with manuals. And I hear people all the time saying, I wish that, I wish my kid came with a manual. I wish my wife came with a manual. Wish my husband came with a manual. Wish life came with a manual. Well, if you wish it, go create it. Create that manual for you. If you wish your kid came with a manual, go write a manual for you and your kid. Write these manuals. You obviously want them, go write them. So part of creating your own pleasure manual is going to get you to be able to look at step by step, what is it that you're actually looking for? It's going to start to have you know a few things about yourself that you probably didn't know. You're probably going to start to get into this list and you're going to go, wow, so the way to turn me on is to get like cuddly, and it's to get fun, it's to get funny. I need to talk beforehand. I'm giving you my pleasure manual. So my pleasure manual sounds a little bit like this, which is I would say that when I look at the whole thing and I want to communicate it in a way that's my language, not somebody else's. Otherwise, I could give you a template for this, but it's important that you use your own words for this. It's also integral. It's a better way to integrate the information for yourself and for your lover to know that this is yours. This is truly yours. This isn't a manual that I wrote, and it's not a manual that you bought in the store. It's not, greatest sex tips 101. This is the manual for you, for your body. So the value of this is that your body will have certain things that other bodies don't have. It'll have reactions, it'll have interests, it'll have cravings that other bodies don't have. So writing your own pleasure manual starts to have you really know these things. And even as I think about it, I'm like, my pleasure manual it's such a delicious manual filled with things like number one is one of the things for me, truly, step one is I what I need is I need to actually have my body calm. I don't I'm not a person who gets revved up and sexual. I get calm and my body relaxes into sex. And if you know that about you, then that's something to put in the manual as well, because some people or some lovers will try and rev you up and they try and like overstimulate, and you're like, but that doesn't work for me. And sometimes they get like aggressively overstimulating. But when you can have conversation and communicate these things, you can go, I need to relax into this. I need to have our conversation first. I need my body to feel at ease. I need to feel connected. And this is true for a lot of, we'll say, female bodies in general. There's a need for relaxation first. Male bodies are a little different. Trans bodies, I can't speak on behalf of that, but I will have some people coming on to talk about their experience with that. And it may be slightly different as hormones change and transition. With transitioning, some hormones can change. So for the most part, when we're talking about the female orgasm tends to come a lot more into when women are feeling comfortable, relaxed, and looked after. So the thing is, men get revved up. It's the thing about heteronormative relationships is that women and men get turned on very differently and at different rates. So, and most of my life I've thought it's actually ideal to be bisexual or homosexual, because you know the kind of the rate of speed of the lover that you're with. If you're a man, you kind of have a different, with a man, you have a different way of approaching it necessarily than you would with a man with a woman. And women with women are going to have different responses as well. And I'm not saying that's 100% the case. For sure, that's not 100% the case, but it is more common. So yeah, I've always had an admiration and kind of a bit of a like, man, I wish I was more lesbian. so yep, true confessions here on tonight's show. Wish I was more lesbian. Well, holy cow, I'm actually at the first break and I didn't even realize it. I'm just blabbering on. So what we're going to talk about are some definite steps on the how. How do we write these processes, coming up in the next segment. So stay tuned. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. So for those of you who are like super excited to get going and start creating your own pleasure manual, get out some paper, get out some pens. How are you going to make this? This is up to you. You can create it on your computer. You can create it on paper. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is it requires words and possibly pictures. So I quite like editing things both in computer, but making a good homemade book too is pretty fun too. You can always download pictures from the internet to give some instruction and add those in too. It's kind of a nice way to do it as well. If you're not super computer literate and you don't have maybe some skills with graphics design on computers, you can absolutely just find pictures, cut them out, write out your manual. And number one thing in writing out your manual is to not sound too much like a manual, and that you don't need it to be what's the word for it, like I don't have the word right now, but it's like when you look at a manual that's say for an electrical device, it can be very rigid and cold. It's just like step one, take it out of box. Step two, make sure that the wires are all connected. Step three, plug it in. Step four, it's just like very almost robotic. It's methodical and robotic. Now, method is great, so methodical can be good. And robotic part, though, we want to add some feeling because this is for your lover. It's also for you to know more about you. So when writing your own manual, I want you to look at several things. How do you feel about the sex you're having right now? Are you enjoying it? And what do you enjoy about it? So let's start with that. So if you are enjoying something of the sex you're having right now, for example, you might be like, well, what I enjoy is I enjoy my lover's penis, but I don't enjoy the lack of stimulation before getting it inside me. Okay, cool. So now we need to go. So we got to give some feedback in this manual too. If you plan on passing this manual over to your lover, and you may or may not, but you also want to look at the parts that are working for you. So when you know that you like the feelings, you like the motion of the ocean, you like all the action part, but there's something lacking, then we need to look at what comes before, what comes after. And there might be some stuff lacking for you in the motion of the ocean. So we're going to look at what works and what doesn't. I want you to first start with a list. It's just a list before you start your manual. What's working for you? What's not working for you? Keep it super simple. Is the way your lover gives you oral sex working for you? Does your lover give you oral sex? Does that work for you? Do you enjoy kissing your lover? Does that work for you? Does that not work for you? All the things that you actually do, does it work for you or doesn't it work for you? And then I want you to go through that as well and get into some other things, like add a few things. Now, one of the things you can do to add a few things is to go over to Inspired Choices Network, go over to my page, The Pleasure Zone, and in it, I have a do's, don'ts, and maybes list. If you click on there, you will get access to my do's, don'ts, maybes list for free. And it's got about 80 things in there that you can choose from, that you can add. Things you like, things you don't like, but then things you might want to explore that you haven't explored yet. And you might want to include those in your manual just as some options. Like some manuals will have, say, like baking manuals, cooking books. They're basically manuals. And in them, they might have things like substitutes. If you don't have chocolate chips, you could use walnuts, that sort of thing. So we can have some substitutes in there as well. It's good to get some ideas. And if you don't have any, again, just go over to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com, go over to the Pleasure Zone and find the list. It's on a leaderboard. It's the do's, don'ts, and maybes leaderboard. Alrighty, so once we've gathered this information of what's working for you, what's not working for you, I'd like you to start to look at some of the things like, how would you like to start your sex? And how would you like to start off your sexual experience. Maybe in general, maybe there's something that you know about you. Like I mentioned, I like to be calm. So also for those of you listening, looking for the list, you can find it in any of my podcast descriptions as well. I have a few things in there, so go find them. So when we're looking at I'm going to get back to that list and looking at the manual. So like I was saying, that for me, number one is that I like to be calm. So what are some things that I need to be calm? Number one would be cuddling and conversation. So that would be number one, but I might have some options in there. Option two, so optional responses for calm down would be maybe having a glass of wine, listening to some music, going for a drive. I'm like a baby that way. I like going for a drive and having some, babies like to have their bottle, and I think grown-ups do too. So you can have this, know your methods of calming down. Sometimes it could even be watching a show or movie together. Sometimes it's reading to each other. Maybe you find something that's super sexy to read. Now, I don't really do the reading together thing with my husband. He's quite deaf, so we have to do things where he can either read, or when we watch TV with subtitles. So having a manual, for example, for me is super helpful, because for my lover, it's easier for him to read than it is for him to read my lips all the time. So I don't have to look at him directly and say everything, because he refuses to learn sign language. So yet, anyway, he might choose to later. But I can give him a manual. I can give him a list of things I would like. Sometimes in that list, I might say something to the effect of, there was a program on Netflix I watched, there was this couple, can you go see what they do? And that's something that I would like to try. So those are some ways that I also communicate. Those are ways that I create my list, but also it's like part of the way that my manual works. This is what I would like. I understand that you didn't see the same show I did, so can you go watch this and see what that couple did? Because that's what I'd like to do. And that's all you can do, is you can give information, you can be open and see what your partner's open to. And hopefully when you are working with communication, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, written, doesn't really matter, that your partner acknowledges you and says, yes, I can do that. And then give them some time to follow through. So I usually give, this is just what I do with my husband. I give him 3 months to follow through on my requests. He's a busy dude. He does a lot of work. So I'm not the person who gives him a request and then like harasses him every 24 hours. I'll give him a request and I'll come back in 3 months if I haven't seen him follow through, and then I'll ask again. And then usually he'll say, well, why didn't you ask me like before? And I'm like, because I'm giving you time. So don't want to be the nag. But there have been a few occasions where he's like, why haven't you asked me sooner? Well, giving you time. So see what works for you. It might be needing to remind more often. It might be needing to remind once a month. Did you have a chance to see that? How's that going? Yeah. Try not to be a nag, because, this is probably a whole new concept and a whole new way of communication. And I know you're looking for results, but often you haven't even created your own targets yet. So it's hard to get a result when you're just a nervous bundle of energy and you don't really have a clear knowing of what you would like and how to get your partner to either be part of that or for you to deliver that to yourself, right? So being clear on your process of like, what do you require in order for your body to be ready for sex? It could be like 2 days of adventures. Like, just know that your process is different than anybody else's. And this is why it's important to kind of get to know what yours is. It might take you 5 days to rev up to be able to feel sexual towards your partner. And then when you finally do, it might take you another 5 days in between to feel it again. And that's okay. That's your process. Your body is going to work with this different than anybody else's body. So know what that is for you. And you can write it like a step process. You can also write it just as suggestions. These are some things I like. Can we try this? So we can definitely approach things in a way that is respectful to yourself and respectful to your lover, acknowledging your lover's capacities. Like in the manual, you can even read like, I really love it when you stroke my clit. Can we do that after we sit down and talk about stuff? Can you look me in the eyes and give me the energy of withholding stroking my clit so bad that I beg you to do it? See, I find that delightful. Then ask for that, right? So know what you require. So my body can get calm too, but then it can also get that calm where then the energy builds, and it's like the desire builds and then the intensity builds. Check if that's true for you too. So knowing that, if that's true, then invite your partner to be part of the experience of living your manual. Now, there might be some things in your manual that your partner just does not want to do or has completely said no to. And this is when, if you've written a manual or even done the list, the do's, don'ts, maybes list, and you're finding that there are too many things that just don't jive, like things that you would like to do that your partner is like, no way in any universe am I doing this, then it's time to reevaluate where this relationship is at. So that's for a different show, though. This is the show about creating the manual. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, sweet pleasure seekers. for those of you who are like feeling a little overwhelmed by this entire idea or process, no worries. Give me a shout. Find me on milicajelenic.com. That's MILICAJELENIC.com. Send me a little message. We can set up a discovery session. We can set up a session if you're already gung-ho and want to go. And we can work through your pleasure manual. We can probably have a lot of it written within about 1 to 2 sessions. So let me know if that is something you desire and require, and we can definitely get that done. And if you're feeling confident and you're ready to rock and roll and you'd like to start your manual right away, go for it. Turn this show off and go write your manual, and then come back and listen to the rest of it because I'm adding more in right now. So just teasing you. Just stick around to the end, then maybe go write your manual. Sound good? So just as I was mentioning earlier, you know, when I'm looking at targets in my life and when I look at targets with clients, I can see the end picture, but I also see the processes. And so even with this pleasure manual, depending on where your relationship is at, if you're feeling really disconnected in your relationship, then one of the things to do is definitely go out and get some books. Like I highly suggest the 5 love languages so that you can know what your love language is, what your lover's love language is, what, you know, the different the variations within those love languages, how you express love and how you receive love from your partner and how you express it to people. Those are all really, really great things to know. And then, say for example, me, I'm a person who one of my primary love languages is touch, and another one is acts of service. So for me, my primary love language of touch, when relationships break down for me, whether it's with a lover or with a friend, for me, one of the things that can contribute greatest to me is if I can actually be physically around that person and be able to either hug them or have them hug me, or even it can be really rando, like I can have, you know, somebody, I can have a friend over, and then even if I can just touch their head, then I can start to feel reconnected to people. I'm very, very connected through touch, and so for me, touch is highly, highly integral for my everything that has to do with my pleasure manual and how my body works. So what is it for you? Do you require, you know, some things to be given to you so that you feel loved? Like, do you need roses brought to you so that your body feels happy, like you're being loved? So knowing those love languages can be super helpful, especially if you feel like the love is lacking. Using those love languages, you can add those into your manual as well as hints, ideas, and clues for your lover so that they don't have to sit around guessing. You know, and sometimes it can be just so simple, like having somebody vacuum the floor can be like, wow, thank you for loving me. And if you just say to your partner, you know, if you like vacuum the floor like once a week, even though I vacuum the floor every day in my house, but if you vacuum the floor like once a week, it would just mean so much to me that it would show me that you love me. It would show me that you know that my time is as valuable as your time and that I would like to spend quality time with you. And what I'm doing is an act of service in order to have that quality time with you. And I would like, you know, in response, I would like some touch. And sometimes we need words of praise. Today I had a fun day of I needed words of affirmation. I didn't really need affirmation. I just wanted praise, big time. And it was very cute. For most of the day, I was about age 7 to 9, a happy 7 to 9. And I was doing things that would incite praise, scrubbing things to the most, and then showing it off, going, look what I did. So yes, and my daughter even told me I was being adorable, as my friend in the chat room is telling me that's adorable. Yeah, my daughter told me, you're adorable. I'm like, wow, I'm like littler than you right now. You're a teenager and I'm like a little kid running around going, look what I did, look what I did, look at all the laundry I did, look at this, look what I did. So, yep, sometimes we're cute. And for me, I know that I can show these things off, and I know that that I don't do it very often. So when I do, there's usually like I could do the same stuff any other day of the week or year and not have that same inclination for praise. So I won't even say anything. And sometimes there's a need for it. So I'm like, look what I did. And then I get the praise because I'm kind of demanding it. And that's just the way I am. So, so know what you require. This is what your pleasure manual is all about. How do you operate? What gets you ticking? What gets you turned on? What has you motivated to be with your partner? What has you pleased with your partner? What would you like to have improve in your partnership? It's not about changing your lover, but there's always room for more and greater and improvement. So what are some things maybe like in terms of lovership parts of it? It's like, like I was talking about the motion of the ocean before, and maybe you might be I had another client last week who was like so done with doggy style. She's like, I don't know. I did doggy style my whole life, and now I'm like so done with doggy style. I just want to be looked at. And I'm like, wow, that is really cool to know that that's changed for you. It's really important for you to say that to your lover because your lover is used to doing probably doggy style most of their life. So it's always good to have these conversations. And sometimes people will do that for some, they all have their reasonings. There sometimes are subconscious reasons to it. Personally, it's my favorite. I get the most sensation and feeling, so that for me is the most fun. And but that wasn't always the case. I do know that uh, in my 20s, after my body went through some crazy stuff, I really didn't do well with that. I didn't do well with anything where I didn't feel like I was in control, and I didn't do well with anything where I didn't feel like the person respected me enough to look at me. So there's some additional information in the chat room for those of you, if you are ever in the chat room, could have so much fun in here with us. So it can be something that you need to look at, like what is it about this position that I really love, and or really this bothers me. And there can be things, all kinds of things that come up that bother you. It could be the speed of the sex, the lack of presence during sex. And I'm not talking about like gifting things, I'm talking about being present. And having a lover that's not present is like, you might as well go fuck a sock. Like there's no reason to, if you really want to tap out, then go tap yourself and tap out at the same time. There's no reason to involve another person and then completely check out of the experience. That is really unkind, unless your lover is into that and it's like a kink of theirs. But if it's not a kink of your lovers to have you disappear, then be present. And when it is a kink, you still have to be present with not being present. I know that sounds wild, but kinks involve an incredible amount of presence required. And if you can't be present, don't even bother getting kinky. That's what I have to say, is you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to be with that person and know safety limits and things. So the more present you can get, the more exploration you can choose or not choose. Presence is key though, as well as communication, two super important parts of this. So know that I did mention this before though, use your own wording in your pleasure manual. So if when you talk to your lover about your body, if you don't call your vulva, and you call it Mrs. Betsy or something, then just say Mrs. Betsy likes when you pat her. Mrs. Betsy likes when you stroke her. Mrs. Betsy likes when you enter her. I don't know, I'm saying Betsy, but I had a really good friend in grade school, Bessie, but I didn't have a Betsy in grade school. So anyway, just giving you names because who knows? There's lots of names out there. Use your language that you use with your lover. That way, you know, it's personal. They'll understand it. You'll understand it. You'll understand what you're asking for. And look at it from every angle of your sensory experience and how you experience love. So definitely, if you haven't read the 5 love languages, remember to go out and get it. I can't say that enough. You can get it on audio as well. So once you've got these ideas and you start to communicate them, the thing about your manual is it's not written in stone. You can edit it, you can add to it, you can change it, you can reiterate it, you can share it, you can not share it. You can read it over and over and over and over again for yourself and then tweak it. Tweak your nipples while you're tweaking it too. Why not? You can absolutely tweak it and then just know that this manual is specifically, it's for you, number one, to know how your body operates, how you get turned on, and how you feel loved. It's the manual for you. Now, when you have that down and you know how you operate and what brings you love, like what offers you a sense of love, then when you're in partnership, or if you're looking for a partner, or if you're in one, you'll be able to know if you're being loved or feeling loved. You'll know if there's something that needs improvement. And then you'll also start to know if your partner isn't able to follow through on like any of your requests, or they're only able to follow through on, say, like 10% of your requests, that maybe there's a time for renegotiating the relationship, for getting maybe some counseling or some coaching. We have lots of great coaches here on Inspired Choices Network. So you can, most of us work, well, not, I'd say half of us work with relationships probably in some way or another. So you can connect with us, can connect with me as I work with couples and individuals with sex and intimacy. And you can message me through milicajelenic.com so that we can connect and make sure that we got you moving forward. So we're going to head to our last commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. So tonight we're talking about creating your own pleasure manual for you. We started out for you, and then we move on and see what we can share or what you can share with your lover. Most of the time when we get really frustrated in our relationships, it's because we haven't really sat down to stop and think about, what do I actually desire? What do I actually require? What are my targets? We just know that we're not happy, but we don't know what we actually would like. So at the beginning of the show, or maybe in the first segment, I asked you to write down things you like, things you don't like that are going on, whether it's in the sack, out of the sack, before sex, after sex. Start to get an idea of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. then knowing that, you can start to create more of an understanding of what you are looking for. You can start your first draft of your manual. You could even have a beginner's manual. You could have different levels of your manual. It's like having different levels of say, like basic. The basic manual for me is I require a hug daily, minimum one hug daily. And then, medium or whatever you might want. Second, I think when I was in high school, we had these levels in school that was like basic, general, advanced, and advanced, enhanced. So let's play with that. So basic, hug me every day. General, if we're gonna have sex, I require these 3 things before sex, these 3 things after. Advanced will be more of the nuances, some options. And then enhanced would be really taking it into a further exploration of what more you require. And you can always start with that very basic manual of like, what is it I require daily that I'm not receiving? And remember with your lover to always give praise for what does work as well, because there's only so much criticism any human being can take before they want to just off themselves. And I'm not saying that lightly, because that happens to people a lot. They just get done. They're just done not being good enough. So give them praise for the things that you do appreciate that they are doing for you. Like, thank you so much for taking out the garbage. And I just wondered if I could have a hug. That's pretty much how I do it. And it's been working for me. So if you give them a lot of like finger pointing, finger wagging, and telling them they're really crap, unless they're into that. And some lovers are into that. So now be aware of this, because if your lover is into being belittled and it turns them on, they may actually be doing things to have you get angry at them. And then you have to know whether that works for you, whether you want a relationship where you feel compelled to belittle them all the time, or knock them down and knock them apart and feel like you have to be dominant. And that's okay as long as it's consensual. And what sometimes happens is people who are doing that sometimes don't even know they're doing it to get you mad at them. And then they don't know why they're turned on or horny or go off to watch like porn that's all about that. Instead, they just keep doing things to piss you off, and then you get mad and they get turned on by you being mad, but you're not turned on. You're actually quite put off and quite upset. So, if you just got to know like where they stand on this sort of thing, and like, are you working their manipulation, if that's what it is, and it's getting really clear between the two of you, and noticing like, oh, wait a second, my husband gets really turned on when I yell at him. Oh, he really wants to be dominated. And then you just have to see, is that what you would like to do? That's definitely not my husband, but that is a lot of bodies out there, and people who show up in bodies like to have that experience. So you just need to know whether that's true for you, and whether that's true for your lover, and whether that works for you or not, right? So I mentioned that you always got to check in, does that work for me? And if it doesn't, and you would still like to be with your partner, then negotiating ways that they can receive what they desire. Maybe they need somebody to be their dominatrix or something in the circumstance that I mentioned. And maybe they need to be able to be lovers with you in a different way, or you need to be lovers with somebody else. And there's so many variations thereof. But if you require any assistance on this, remember to find me through milicajelenic.com. Have a listen to my shows. Check out all the podcasts that are available, over 300 of them, on inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.